All right, I'm calling to order the Budget and Finance Advisory Committee meeting. We're at the Central Administration Conference Room, and it's January 12th, 2026, and it's 4:31 p.m. Okay, first on the agenda is just everyone introducing themselves. Start with you, Leslie Ann.
Leslie Ann Powell, Director of Finance for the School Department.
Robert Jones, Community Member.
Sherry Kennedy, School Committee Member.
Kenny Duba, Superintendent.
Jennifer Lima, School Committee Member.
We don't have any citizens' comments. And the next is to approve the minutes from the December 1st, 2025 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 No, abstain.
Oh,
I was
discussion.
absent, so.
Oh.
Do we need to do discussion?
Did you want to discuss?
No, I just didn't, no,
okay.
we just kind of
Yeah.
immediately went into it.
Yeah.
Alright. All approved. Thank you. Oh, no, put an abstain too. Alright. Leslie Ann, you're up.
Month, okay. Yeah, we're exciting. Budget drivers for fiscal 27. So what Dr. Duva and I have put together here is just kind of like a highlight reel of what we've seen with all of the budget meetings that we had with the directors and the principals. These are the things that are going to be driving the bottom line for the budget. And there are some things that are important to note as we're going through this process. So any talk of revenue is still very high level because we do not have our state aid numbers. We do not have projections on tuition from RIDE for any of the CTE programs. We don't have any of the projections for transportation. That's going to affect our pass-throughs. So we also don't have any of the information from our healthcare, for our healthcare, property, or workers' comp insurance yet. So these are some of the things are very conservative. Keep that in mind between now and even next Tuesday. They might change, but they are all going to impact it. So I wanted to make sure they're at least highlighted in this presentation. So we'll start with revenue. These are kind of the main areas that we see within our budget. So very high level. We have tuitions. When I'm looking at these are tuitions coming into the district from students that are coming from other LEAs. And when we look at the number of students graduating out and the possible number of students coming in, it looks like we're only going to have about 5 student increase from fiscal 26 to fiscal 27. That said, in fiscal 26, we actually have more students than we had originally anticipated. So going year over year, when you're looking at what we budgeted in 26 and what we budgeted to 27, there'll be a larger gap because we did end up having more students. I think we budgeted for 135 in 26 and we're closer to 140.
Can I ask you a question? So on the CTEs, is there like a deadline that kids have to apply?
There is a deadline. Sometimes we do offer exceptions.
When's the deadline? I'm just curious.
It is in the spring. I don't know.
Okay, which makes sense. It's well before.
Yeah, it's around like March. April.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same for charter schools as well. So charter schools, that information comes out in March. And I believe they have throughout that whole month and into April to make a decision. So it's really tough because it can fluctuate a great deal from when we have our first budget meetings to by the time we're getting ready
that's why I was asking
to put
what it
through.
was, because it's not like we would know anyways before that.
And that's why I try to take a conservative approach when I'm doing it. I do the same thing with the tuition. So if you notice, I have a 1.5% increase. That's what we had done in last year's budget. And that's the range for RIDE when they're looking at tuitions that we would get from other districts can be anywhere from 1 to 3.5%. It's a big range and it's really hard to tell. Some will go up, some will go down from year to year. So taking that 1.5%, it's conservative because we don't want to overestimate the possible revenue that we could have. And one of the things I do want to point out is our Jamestown numbers for 26 are lower than we had predicted in our budget. So we're going to take that same, we're going to base it off of what we have now. So when you're looking at 27, you will see a decrease in that revenue because of the fact that the actual numbers that came in from that district were lower. this
Was
year.
it less kids or they went somewhere else?
I was gonna say, did they go to Narragansett or somewhere else, or because there were fewer students?
You know, I don't know if we have that information, like if that's information
The
that we can
enrollment
get.
continues to drop in James. So I think part of it
Right.
is that it's less students that we do have, that are there, that then have the opportunity to come here.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know though, like, is Narragansett's going up, or like, are they seeing a decline also?
Yeah, we can look, we can,
But we
You
do
can find
know
out if that is-
Jamestown eighth grade current enrollment, correct? We know how that compares to their eighth grade enrollment last year. We can get all that.
We do
data.
have basics, and that's how I base the information. Plus, we also have communications with the finance director in Jamestown based on what they're doing and how they're budgeting and what they're assuming is gonna be their numbers, and we make sure that they tie, so that when we're both budgeting, it makes sense on both sides. So we do have information that we get. The information that we put in our budget was based on numbers that we used exactly like you're saying, and that we got from Jamestown. Just when the school year began, they didn't have as much enrollment. There were not as many students that were coming. Maybe because they've gone to CTEs and, I mean, because at the high school level, when you're thinking about it at that point, it's because they're going to a different program
Right,
somewhere
'cause
else. They're just
before-
not going to school
yeah.
anymore.
It used to be Jamestown could only come here, and now that's not the case. They have many more options, so
Mhm.
like, I'd be curious to know where those kids are
I'm
going.
gonna get that data for
Okay.
us. I'll get it, because I just know, like, historically, like, the numbers have been pretty similar between Narragansett and us
Mhm.
of how many go each year,
Yeah.
what that is. I also know that enrollment has been dropping.
Mhm.
But I'll get the exact number of how many students that they currently have right now. We usually get that in the early spring, once they make the decision. So our guidance counselors talk to each other, and then we get that information. And I just know historically, that's February, March is when those decisions are being made of where they're going and who's looking into CT programs, who's not, and then we actually get better numbers to look at.
Could we actually know from like this year, like how many of, like the eighth grader Jamestown kids came here versus went to another school? Like, is there that type of data available?
Well,
Because
we
isn't that
would-
what you're asking, Jen?
Yeah,
Sort of
like,
like
'cause if
this
you were
year,
to,
like,
they had, let's say, 90 eighth graders, I know that's not the number, but we were expecting, you know, of those 90, like, based on historical, like, half of them to come here. And if that didn't happen, where did those other,
We know
because
that.
those were real kids, like,
Yeah.
it wasn't, that was not a theoretical number.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And
We
like
have
those
an,
are-
we have an idea of, you know, I can just ask them numbers, you know, right? So we know how many are coming to us, how many of your students went elsewhere.
Right,
And just know what that
because I think
difference
it's
is.
more to like the bigger picture, right, like in terms of like, if we are losing kids elsewhere, why, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of,
Like what programs, and is
Yeah.
it something that we're offering?
I don't, and I will say just from when I looked at that list from last year, nothing stuck out to me, thinking, oh, wait, they're not coming to us because more are going to other schools and other places.
Mhm.
It seemed pretty similar to what I have known of that population of how many go to private schools,
Yeah.
how many go to NK, how many go to Narragansett, how many go to a charter or, you know, a different type of high school. There was nothing that stood out to me looking at those numbers last spring that was like, ooh, we gotta watch this.
and it could just be they have less kids than they
And
used
it
to,
And they-
could
which
be
is,
Okay, so preschool tuition. So this one is interesting because it's kind of twofold. One, I wanted to highlight and reflect on the fact that when we were going through the budgeting process last year, we were budgeting based off of the prior year and kind of what we were anticipating for a normal preschool program. But what we saw was kind of a change in the program in fiscal '26 with the move to DA, and we expanded to a full-day program. But what happened when we did that is we lost 24 peer model seats. And those 24 peer model seats are tuition seats. So we lost about $40,000 in revenue that we had budgeted for '26 that we are now not gonna have because we don't have that program. So when you look at kind of how I've structured the revenue for the budget, I show that reduction. I show that we're looking at closer to 110,000 in revenue as opposed to the 150 we had the prior year. That said, you'll see in some of the other slides that there are things that we'd like to do in terms of following this strategic plan for preschool that could help to offset that. But I still, like, if that doesn't get approved during the budget, I still need to account for what we think the revenue would be as the program exists right now. So as of right now, you're gonna see a reduction of about $40,000 in the revenue for preschool.
So just, I'm sorry, just so I'm clear.
Mhm.
moving to DA meant there's just less classrooms to use?
No, not at all, actually. They changed the program, so instead of having 2 half-day programs, they created a full-day program. And that full
And
day,
that's effective this year or last
it
year?
was in fiscal '26.
And did the tuition change for the full day?
It changes, but it's the student population that's in it. So we had 24 peer model, I guess seats, we'll call them, that now don't exist.
Right, but does the
Because-
district get reimbursed for the,
Well, no, but it
for
was
the,
a full day.
for the FRL type student, right?
Yeah, but so the difference is though, when that change happened, it went to a full day self-contained program.
Mhm.
So there's no tuition coming in for that class, right? So it was, so when we had to make that programmatic change to a full day, right, that was a full day program for students with IEPs.
Mhm.
So that means you don't have any tuition, so it wasn't full day inclusion program.
Okay,
So you're not getting any tuition coming in, so you're losing.
but not to
Those
jump
numbers.
ahead, but the district could offer preschool for full pay students, correct?
We could, and that's something that we're looking at.
And that's
what
why I
we're
say
going to
it's
do for next year.
twofold. So when we get to the kind of expense side of things, and I don't mind jumping ahead because that's the purpose of this, exercise here, is one of the things that you'll see is one, to increase tuition for what we currently have, if that's something that we want to consider. And we are in the process of kind of investigating what other districts do and what their tuition model is, so that we can see, is that something that we should be doing? Does it not make sense compared to other districts? But then, in aligning with the strategic plan, and the whole point of moving to DA was to increase the programs that we can offer. And by doing so, we would then, again, have those peer model programs. If we were to add a classroom to preschool, would it be, whether it's, Kenny, was it gonna be two half-day programs or another full-day
Well,
program?
that's something we're discussing, so we wanna add another preschool program, so the goal is to continue each year to increase our opportunity for preschool students in our district. So we are planning on adding a program for next year. We're right now talking dramatically, should it be a full-day program, or should it be a half-day program? Half-day program, obviously you would have more seats available, but we know that that's a struggle for families to be able to send their children here in half-day programs. That's why we're strongly considering it being a full-day program. And then we just kind of, the plan is how many programs are we adding each year?
Mhm. So,
But it would be at, I guess, Davisville Early Learning Center.
Right, it'll
Correct,
be at the
correct.
learning center.
Just the fact you're taking a classroom plus to rent to Momentum at very low cost, create an opportunity cost that you could use that space?
No, because we have other spaces ready to be used for that. So right now, so we move there knowing that we have classroom spaces that we can use. We know that we're also looking at transitioning more of the clinical day programs that we have into the other schools, right? So we moved our elementary to Fish and Cove this year. Next year, the plan is to look at moving the middle school program. So we know that there's space there, and that was the whole reason why we wanted to move them there. So even though we have a room right now being used for Momentum, that's not prohibiting us to adding more preschool classrooms.
so because it's kind of, we're still in the deciding factors of the programmatic changes, I don't wanna account for revenue that might not exist or might come in a different form, so we're gonna keep it like that. And again, obviously, we can adjust it as the process goes along and as we make those programmatic decisions. State aid, we do not have our state aid numbers right now. There are many factors that go into what our state aid number could be. When we all remember in '26, we actually lost money from the prior year. We are hoping that that does not happen, but as of right now, I am operating under the assumption that we will, at a minimum, hold flat. And then, obviously, we'll adjust the budget as the true numbers come in and as that happens.
But we do know our state share ratio went up. That's been published. We know it's went up from 24 point something to 25. And we should know our estimated ADM, and we should know the FRL K6 is in the state share. So we at least know our state share percent's going up.
We do, but I mean, I'll be the first to say that when it comes to state aid, whether you know all of the pieces and all of the factors does not necessarily mean that the outcome is going to be what you expect. And knowing that that is going up, I'm hesitant to take that into account without,
Right, but I guess my point is going, we should at least tell the school committee, like, of all the factors, these trends are up, these trends are down.
okay, I mean,
I
we
mean,
can,
that's just, I don't know, there's 2 school committee members here, whether that's something they would wanna know. I mean, at least if our state share went down, that'd be a bad sign.
Right,
Going up is at least a sign against a hedge of, right, the basic cost, foundational costs changing.
yes, but again, even with that change, I'm still hesitant to
No, I understand the point.
count on that as.
I guess what I'm saying is, my suggestion is you should caveat it by saying,
Okay.
we can estimate our ADM, and we can estimate, and we know our state share. And they're working in these trends. Having said that, you're right, really, nobody truly knows until it gets published. But I'd like at least be comfortable knowing that these are positive, these are negative trends.
Okay.
Leslie, I defer to your judgment on that.
I'm like noted, I will look at when doing the presentation, if I feel like that is going to help the conversation, or if it's gonna hold us back, because there's so much that goes into it. I worry that it can be confusing, and especially with wanting to take into account like the public that are watching, I don't wanna mislead, and I feel like,
I wouldn't run any calculations.
no.
No, I understand
No,
that.
I feel like-
But I understand what
We
he's
can
saying, is
sketch
like,
that.
let them
Well,
know,
like,
like, this is
okay,
trending
the
in our
point of it
favor,
is,
this is
if
trending
you know-
against, but I,
Like, take number 1, okay, you're anticipating 5 less. That's useful to know. I mean, you could have said, well, we're gonna participate no change because it's only 5, right? The fact you're at least saying, here's what we think is the trend. That's all my point is with state aid. There's at least one favorable factor that's in the district's favor. I don't know if you've calculated ADM or looking at the ADM trend to say it's significantly down, it's fairly stable. That's just my point.
okay. Noted. Okay, Medicaid, we were conservative last year, we ended up, changing some of the ways, we look at the different services that are billable, what was in grants, what could come out of grants and be billable, so working with Dr. Santa on that, and, we definitely saw an increase in kind of what our 25 totals were, and we're on that same trend for 26, so I, am going to put in and build in a slight increase in Medicaid based on those billable services now that we know them. It's gonna come out to be around 3% of higher than what the budget was the prior year, even though our actuals will show higher than that. We had some changes in students from 25 to 26, so I think, it might be a little deceiving when you look at what we actually brought in and what we're budgeting, but I do think that 3% is attainable and realistic. And then, I know we go back and forth on this, investment earnings is always tricky. We had budgeted $475,000 in fiscal '26. I am recommending that we budget $450,000. I think, based on where we're projecting right now, we can hit those numbers, but I am concerned about falling interest rates. I know that we have a back and forth when it comes to this. I think, that $450,000 is reasonable, and I still think it's kind of aggressive compared to where we had been in prior years. So that's gonna be my recommendation, but I'm open to hearing if anyone else has any opinions on what they'd like to see at the actual budget presentation. So,
Well, I think one useful thing would be, what's the average monthly cash flow that's, right? So, because your investment earnings is 2 components, right? The interest rate plus the cash being applied to it. So, is your sort of float and your fund balance rates higher than your estimate to use the 26, right? So you're right, you could budget that interest rates may fall by 25 basis points, but you're running $1 million more in cash. And because you ran a $2 million surplus last year, so I would assume liquid cash is higher.
yes, and it based on how we kind of hold the money in our investment accounts and how we do things with
Right.
transferring it over to keep it as liquid and fluid as possible, but also making sure that we don't have too much sitting in one and not enough sitting in the other. It does run tight during certain points of the year. So that might be, there's not like I could give an average, but I don't know if that would be indicative of kind of the true process and how we do it. I could probably do it quarterly, and that would be easier to show because it's pretty much the same, the beginning of the quarter to the end of the quarter based on like when we get our allocations from the town for our state aid and our appropriations. So, I can certainly put that together and show that. I've done something very similar to what you're talking about to arrive at the 450. That's where I'm comfortable at because I'm looking at month over month, what do we typically see, and even if the interest rates were to fall to X percent, what can we realistically say that we would get in each month based on the dollars that I know are typically sitting in that account in each of those months. That's how I arrived at the 450, but is there wiggle room? Absolutely, there's wiggle room in there. Because again, this is me being very conservative, not knowing what's happening with the interest rates that I can't control. How I pull the money in and out, I do have control over that. So, but if that's something that you think, I'll ask the committee members, do you think that that's getting too deep during?
If I heard you, you said that you're looking at how much money there is in the account roughly each month, right? Because it's not an average, and that's what you base the number on, correct?
Yes.
I think that's more accurate than an average.
Okay. Okay, so moving on, salary and benefits. So this is gonna be interesting because we have a contract negotiation that is currently underway. So we know that there's gonna be changes throughout the course of the year with kind of where we start with the salaries for the teachers to where we might end by the time that this budget finally gets approved. We do know that ESP has a 2% increase that will be factored in. So I think Dr. Duva and I are still kind of in conversations with how we're gonna represent the teacher information in the budget. In terms of benefits, significantly more straightforward. I am proposing that we move forward, recommending a 10% increase in healthcare. I know that seems extreme, but knowing that we came in at a 6.5% and the actual, increase was closer to 11, I have concerns. I don't wanna have to worry about how to find $300,000 in June. So, I'm going in with that 10%. The trust in our conversations has said to expect like high single digits, low double digits, so I feel comfortable with that. And again, we're just basing it off of, I would rather be high at 10% than have to be thinking about what we need to cut toward the end in order to accommodate that.
Do you know what the town is using?
We went back and forth with this. I will find out, and we typically try and
Do
do
the
the same thing. And I know both myself and the finance director for the town do not want to have the same problem that we had last
Right,
year. So
right.
I would be surprised if they are not doing similar,
that, yeah.
but I will confirm
Okay.
prior to actually putting the budget forward.
Okay.
I don't think it's bad. I feel like healthcare costs keep across the board everywhere significantly rising, so I feel like it's better to be prepared for it.
Well, and what we're seeing, so to my next point, what we're seeing is our demographic and our population, we are seeing more and more like family plans that we're getting as opposed to individual plans. More of our employee base, they tend to be, we don't have like a lot of young, single, like newly minted teachers that are in here. So we are seeing that. So on top of that 10% increase, we're also gonna see when we actually look at it, the number might look like there's a significant jump because we do have people making that move from those individual plans to the family plans now. So kind of getting like a double whammy there.
Yeah, I think it's not surprising because I feel like we have a very good healthcare plan, and I'm like, if their significant other works, like in corporate America, I feel like they keep charging
And
their
that's what
employees
we're
more,
just
so
seeing
it
more
sort
and
of
more.
makes sense because I feel like there's a shift.
Well, can you, maybe you're gonna show it, maybe not, but I think it'd be helpful for the committee just to know what's the benefit eligible FTEs you're basing this on? So is overall, is the district growing in benefits eligible FTE?
I can.
Not putting you on the spot.
No, I know, and I'm saying I can
again,
get you
it used
that
to be a matrix of, like, grant funded, benefits eligible, grant funded, not benefits eligible, general fund, whatever, not grant, benefits eligible, not benefits eligible, and just to see that trend. Like, I think it's important for the committee and the public to know is just, are you just employing more people who are benefits eligible?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, because I know we had talked to before too, like, who's the grant employees, who's the regular, so I think it's maybe like a simplistic,
Well, and are there
Chart with
grant
it.
funded employees who are being brought over to the general fund? Like, I think it's just useful to see the trend of how many FTEs is the district employing and by their fund source.
I believe, I will have to go back and look at the presentation that we gave last year. I do
We
believe
do
that
that,
we
we
broke
break it
that
down
out.
if it's operating budget or if they're not.
Yeah, I'm just
And,
saying.
and I know that
some
we talked about actually having that like in the budget
Mm.
document, if it's possible to
Yeah,
like
kind
lay
of
it all
like
out.
combined.
yeah,
so
just
that
kind of look
it's-
at it.
yeah.
So the next two items, unemployment, we have seen a big uptick in what we are paying in unemployment based on resignations and terminations. So, and this is not to scare anyone, but when we look at kind of what we budgeted for fiscal '26 and where we might end, if I were to do like a straight dollar for dollar where we are right now, I would have to double the budget for fiscal '27. That is how much of an increase we've had. I do not think that that's gonna be the case, because I think there are gonna be things that change throughout the year that are gonna adjust it, it might balance out, but there's going to be a jump. Just, again, to be conservative, when we're seeing that, you really need to look at like, where are we now, what are we seeing, and can we reasonably expect that similar things may happen moving forward? The answer to that is yes. So, I'm gonna account for that when we're looking at the unemployment expenses, and the same with our workers' comp. So we have, an increase in employee claims, so I'm anticipating we're probably gonna have between an 8 to 10% increase in workers' comp costs.
Listen, can you clarify on the unemployment? Does the district challenge the ones that are potentially not eligible for unemployment, but the
We do.
district just gives
We
it to
do.
them because?
No.
We
It's the
challenge.
state.
We challenge them, if
Whatever
it can
we
be
can.
challenged, it's challenged.
Having owned a business, we used to, fight everyone, and the state always overrode so
It is.
So you kind of have to count that they're gonna probably
Well, and
get
as I
it.
said, if I look at kind of what it is and
Yeah,
what the potential is, I don't think it will be as extreme, that's why you're not gonna see me doubling the
Yeah.
budget for fiscal '27, but I am gonna account for it. And the same with workers' comp. I just think it, knowing, let's say we're looking at our workers' comp claims, we have to account for the fact that that's going, when we do our renewal for workers' comp, all of those things are gonna play in and be factors in what our premium will be for the next year. So, based on what we have, I think an 8 to 10% increase is more than likely what we'll see. And pension right now is not staying, it's fairly similar, and the new numbers that came out are almost identical to what they are for '26. Okay.
So they've released the ARC for 27? They have released it?
The ESRI rates, yes,
Okay.
yes. I got them like the day after I presented to the town and said we didn't have them. Okay, staffing needs, this is a big one, I have a feeling we're probably gonna be on this one for a while, but we'll see. One of the things, the reason why this is kind of first and foremost, in the presentation, when we're talking about expenses, is because you will notice there's a big ask on this. Now, I 100% understand that the 30 positions that we're talking about right now are not going to be part of the budget presentation that we have in next week.
Well, they might be there because we want them from the school committee of what
Well,
the
yes,
asks are,
what
but
we are
not saying
planning
we
to do,
but it's
are.
good that they asked, even if,
Well, we
so
do,
we
and
know what
that's-
they
and
need.
I think,
Yeah.
like we said, I
I'm
think
excited
it's,
about it.
I think it's really important that the school committee, community, town council know there are needs, because
yes.
I don't think anything that anyone that is asking for is unreasonable. I think it's showing that the workload is increasing.
Mhm.
There's a change across the landscape of education across our country, and the needs are different. And we are trying to do what we can to meet those needs.
Mhm.
And we had an A to Z list, and actually the list went a little further, and that's what we were reviewing in our directors meeting today, everything that's being requested. And do we need to look as a district, we're a school department, we are also like a business, right, with what we do. And do we need to really look at restructuring, expectations, what the roles we all have and what we do, and where new positions need to be added or changed, or restructuring some of the work that we're doing. But there is definitely more work, and I've kind of looked at historically at times of where changes may have been made in the district over the years, and maybe how that has impacted us. Looking at the needs of students, enrollment is pretty static, right? We don't see a huge increase in enrollment across the board, but the needs of the students that are coming to us are different. The requirements from the state are different. What they're requiring teachers to have to do, administration to have to do, reporting, all of that is changing. And I think that's where we see a list of 30 positions that go anywhere from administrative, I don't mean adding administrators like principal, but administrative positions to educational positions to positions that are after-school positions, just because of the needs and the numbers, so.
And it was, so during the budget discussions, just so that everybody is aware and the public knows, I made it a point to ask all of the directors, all of the principals, anybody that we were meeting for these to give us their staff considerations, as well as provide us with a narrative. So initially, the staff considerations were put as part of the budget presentation, and it was discussed with superintendent, assistant superintendent, whoever the director or principal was, and myself. And then based on those conversations, we looked at it and said, okay, we think this makes sense, and then we asked them to provide us a detailed narrative with any data they had to support what they were asking for. And that information will be provided to the school committee to be able to review, so that you're not just getting a list with 30 things and not really understanding the impact. And that was particularly important to me because, like Dr. Dupa was saying, these positions range from interventionists to teachers to coaches to clerical staff to mental health support. There's a full range, and all of them are valid in some way. And I don't think it's fair to any of the positions to just kind of put them in a list, because it's really easy to just say, okay, what's going to have the biggest student impact? But we also have to remember that every single piece of what we do here ultimately impacts the students, because if we cannot provide certain things at certain levels, it does not trickle down to the students in any way. So we tried to be very thoughtful about legitimizing every single request that came in, and not saying, well, it's not a classroom position, so we're not going to consider it. We want all of the decisions to be out there and to have a conversation about it, to say what really makes the most sense, now, next year, 3 years, however we want to do it. So and they're not all full-time positions. Some of them are part-time positions, some of them are add-ons, some of them are stipends, like Dr. Tuva said, some of them are after-school positions, but all important in their own right. So we're happy to discuss any of them tonight, or if there's a way that you'd like us to present this on Tuesday, I'd love to hear suggestions.
I think getting the list with the narrative is good, and like Sherry said, I love to see this, even though it's a huge number, and I know we're not going to be able to do all of it. I think the fact of the fact number one that they're asking for it is great, because that means they're comfortable articulating the need, right? Because a few years ago, these requests were not being put forward, right? And that means that there's a need that's not being communicated. Well, and I think that it's a trickle effect, right?
Yeah.
All these things, but if we're not aware of the true extent, and like you said, it's not just in one area and one thing, and looking at it holistically and what needs to be shifted. If we don't have that information, then we can't fix it to make things work. So I think having the information is the first step. So,
Yeah, I 100% agree. Because I also feel then we at least know, even if we can't do it this year, we could budget.
Have
You know
a
what I mean?
plan for
So I feel
it.
if we
That's the
didn't
whole
know, so I'm
reason, is to
actually
plan ahead
glad
of-
they felt like they
Right.
could tell us, because we can't say yes or no if you don't say.
And,
we
and,
need
that,
it.
and that was kind of how I presented to them. I said, if you
Yeah.
don't ask, nothing will happen.
Right.
If you ask,
And this
the
is the
worst
time.
that happens is we say no.
right,
And
or not now.
Or not now, or
Right.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
They're really, there's no negative to putting it forward. And I will say, every single department, every single one, every department or principal that I met with had a request. There was at least one in every department, which to me is very telling,
Yep.
that we are all strained in some way.
Yep.
And so I'm glad that they felt comfortable to be able to just put it out there. And some of them even said like, oh, I know this is a stretch, or I know this is ridiculous. I'm like, nothing is a stretch. If you feel the need, then it's warranted.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we're putting it in there, so.
And I think, Ken, I think that's a testament to you and the culture that you've created, like, to make that, like, able to come up to the surface, so thank you for that.
I mean, not receiving any information, so it's pointless to argue the merits in this body right now. I would just say that the default of going, it's a position, needs to be contextualized. Point. What's the capability that's being requested? I think that's important too. So we need more, this department would like a part-time position. Okay, that's one way of solving it. But I think it's important for the school committee to go, what capabilities are we trying to solve? Now what are options to address it? I think also what's important is to go, and what positions or consultants or other spending is coming off the books from 26. One off the top of my head, I pray to God you're not asking for a fourth year vision of a graduate consultant. So that's $24,000 of Title II money that could be redirected somewhere else to fill a need. So I think what needs to go along with this is, what are capabilities we either don't need as much, and how are we solving those right now, or other sources, contracts, consultants, something that's being structurally funded that is coming off that could be redirected to this. Because I think just going, we have a need and we want a position without the context of saying, here's everything else, right? So is there software solutions? Is there third-party solutions? Is there getting rid of other stuff, capabilities that are less important? So again, I just think it's a holistic conversation, Kenny, you need to have, as opposed to arguing the merits of, we need this position, we need this position, we need this position.
It
Yeah,
sounds like
that's
you
what
asked
you
them to
said.
include that
and,
too.
and we've
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
that, of saying like, we can't just keep asking. Like, we need to look at a restructuring as well, of in doing this, if we're going to add X.
Right, but that's why I
Where's that
think
coming from?
putting
How
a
are we doing it?
capabilities component to this. So you need a teacher, but really, what's the service being, what's the capability being provided? And then you can have a more holistic conversation of, now what's the best way to meet it? And it may be a position, I don't know, right, until you see the whole
And
range of
that's
stuff.
that's what we're doing, right? So I mean, we're in that process now, and that's what we had a lengthy directors meeting this afternoon on, of what's the role, what's the responsibility of that. So if we're going to add, for example, I'm gonna talk about Leslie's department in finance, like,
Right.
there's
Yeah,
more
that's
support
fun.
that's needed because we're not able to get all of the reporting done in a feasible manner, right? When audit happens, I was helping her with the audit last week. I don't mind doing it, right? But if there was a additional controller or accountant or someone in there, that person would be the one sitting with her and doing that and going through and checking that, while someone else is doing other reports and someone's doing payroll and someone's working on the budget. But when you don't have enough staff to do all of that, some of that work's not getting done.
I think to
And
Bob's
that's
point though,
where
he's saying
that's-
like the need there is like temporary audit support or like
Mhm.
temporary reporting. So like instead of a position, is there another way to fill that gap,
Mhm.
right? And so, I think we're all having the same conversation, and once we see where the needs have been
Mhm.
identified, we can have a conversation about what the best way is to fill it, and are there other people in other roles that maybe those roles or those staff can be redirected to
Mhm.
support, but like without
Right.
the detail, it's, you can't have the conversation, so.
And to be respectful of this committee's time, knowing that we had all of this and all of these different positions, and I will say, like, we gave everybody till, last Monday, or this past Monday to, provide those narratives so that they had time after our budget meetings, they were on break, but we gave them time to really be thoughtful about what they wanted to do and how they wanted to be put together. But we can certainly share them to anyone on this committee if you wanna see them, and to get an idea so that we can make, you know, for the next time we meet, if this conversation comes up again, everybody here has the same information, we can certainly share them.
I would say providing it in advance to the school committee before the meeting would be helpful, so that they're not absorbing it for the first time, like in the meeting or the day before the meeting, right? So that they can have with the context of this conversation, right? So that people can come to the meeting with questions to ask around it, right? And versus getting it like the day before.
And what I'm trying to do right now is take them and make them more uniform so that there's some consistency to it, so it's a little bit easier to kind of read, and you can kind of have some like quick hit pieces of information so you're not going through this, you know, giant stack of things. But in the interest of time, if it does not get to that point, I will send them as is.
Yep.
So that at least the information is there.
Yeah.
And you'll have the ability to, like you said, absorb it with plenty of time, because it's gonna be a lot to go
Yeah.
through. And to your point, Bob, I couldn't agree more that when we're looking at the budget as a whole, a budget is nothing but a series of trade-offs. That's what it is. So we have to look at it, and as if in fiscal '27, we as a district and as a school committee come together and say, our priority needs to be on our staff and making sure that we are putting the people in place where they need to be, how they need to be, in whatever capacity, programmatic capacity they are, so that we can best utilize them and provide the best outcome for our students. That's the trade-off that we make for fiscal '27, and maybe we don't do some other things that we have done, you know, historically each year with, and I'm just saying, like, with technology or with curriculum or whatever it might be. Like, it's a trade-off no matter what we do, and that can be on 30 positions, it can be with one position, and it could be with, you know, 30 small things that we take out of the operating budget, or 2 very large things that we take out of it. So you're exactly right in what you're saying, is that no matter how we look at it, it's not like we're just gonna walk in and add 30 positions and say, okay, we're done, we're moving on, and add $3 billion to the budget and not be thoughtful about other things that maybe aren't a priority in this coming year, in order for us to accommodate that, and then we kind of work with it over the next couple of years. But again, that's a much larger discussion. Okay, I'm gonna move on, just in the interest of time, and we have,
Speaking of technology.
yeah, we have Chaz here as well, because this is definitely a hot topic, and I think it's gonna be important, because we're gonna see this reoccurring theme of, there are things that we, you know, knowingly last year took out of the operating budget. Most of them were one-time cost things. They were not, it wasn't something that we see continually that we took out and used fund balance. We tried to be very cautious of that. We don't ever wanna find ourselves in a structural deficit, so we wanna be very smart about that. But there were some technology items that have either been covered by grants in past years, or again last year, this past year with fund balance, i.e. the Chromebooks. We used different enterprise funds to pay for the admin laptops. Those are items that I would like to see back in the operating budget this year. I think it's important for them to be there, unless we as a district decide that we are going to allocate fund balance money every year for our technology upgrades and say, this is how it's being paid for, and if we don't have that fund balance, we're not getting technology upgrades, and that's a real thing. So if we're not going to make that like hard decision and say we're gonna stay firm to this, we need to have it in the operating budget. So the technology budget is gonna see a major leap from last year to this year, because there were a lot of one-offs that we were able to pull out and that we've purchased, and a testament to you, Chaz did a fantastic job of getting a lot of those items for even less than we had anticipated, so we haven't had to use as much of the fund balance as we had anticipated so far. So he's done a really great job of that, and then with his budget this year, to what Bob was saying, looking at the trade-offs and what our needs, what our wants, you know, what would be nice to haves, what can we move away from, like what are things that we don't need because we're not utilizing really, and in order to get other things. So when we look at this technology budget, even though it looks huge compared to what it was before, I think there's been a lot of work that has gone into this, so I think it's important to kind of think about that, and I will certainly present it the same way next week. But my plan right now is to put things like student Chromebooks, teacher laptops, the cybersecurity back in the operating budget, unless, you know, this committee feels strongly otherwise.
Say put it in for now, right? And then if we have to, we can have that
Yeah,
conversation.
but I agree with you, it's not something that's gonna go away. It's not like all of a sudden the
Right.
kids aren't gonna need their Chromebooks or, you know what I mean, or like, it's not like technology is gonna like all of a sudden disappear.
So I see on here upgrade computer labs too at DMS. Why did that not come up in any of the conversations about the like work that we're doing at Davisville?
So, well, when we say upgrade, it's a replacement of.
The actual computers.
Computers,
It's
right.
the actual computers.
Maybe we
Yeah,
could
so
change
it's
the
not-
phrasing, so like.
Oh, sure.
Okay, just
Oh,
so
sure.
Yeah,
like
it's just a
that is
replacement of
a.
computers.
That's a good idea, cause I knew exactly,
Yeah.
but only cause my kids are
Yeah.
in computer class, I'm like, oh
Okay.
yeah, I know they have different, you wouldn't know that, like they have different computers
not
they
renovating
use
the
at the
Yeah,
lab
it kind
versus
of
their
sounds,
Chromebook.
yeah, just to avoid that
Yeah, a
question.
replacement of
Yeah.
I agree, cause I only knew that.
And like, why are we fixing up the lab at Wickford when we're gonna tear it down?
No, it's
So, yeah.
just the computers, and actually, and you know, unless we wanna get really into detail, Chaz can speak more on it, but, we've talked about, these are just, these computers are really bad, very antiquated.
Yeah, no, that's fine, like, I just,
Yeah, it's
like,
just-
it was
it's
like,
just the
I was
technology
thinking
pieces.
structurally, so, yeah.
Yeah, maybe call it like computer equipment.
Equipment,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
cause
very
it's
easy.
true, like I knew what they were talking
Yeah.
about, but I'm like, it's only cause my kids
yeah.
take computer class. Otherwise you might be like thinking it's a whole new structure.
Right,
Yes, no, yes.
I mean, using fund balance comes from surpluses, so surpluses just means you ran surpluses in other lines, so it definitely makes sense to put structural items in the general budget, in general fund, so part of the challenge is identifying where you're running continual surpluses and reallocating.
Mhm.
I will say one thing though, the computer insurance at enterprise fund, it's, I mean, because it's, in theory, doesn't have a lot of expense, right? I mean, is the reappropriation going back to computer equipment? So, is it going to the general fund and then thing, or the enterprise fund itself is buying, you see what I'm saying? Are you scarfing off the surplus into the general fund, or are you just re-spending within the enterprise fund for technology equipment?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, jump in anytime, like, so we have the insurance
Right.
that is paid for, and this was actually something that we talked about taking out of, it's something that's gonna happen in this budget is, right now, we get the insurance money, that's what was building that
Right.
enterprise account.
Yeah.
But all of the replacement parts and everything was coming out of the operating fund.
Right.
So our recommendation this year that we were gonna put forward is it's a $15,000 line that's been in the operating budget, is to take it out and move it to enterprise, so that all of those items, instead of being an encumbering order in the operating fund, everything that's used to repair the Chromebooks and all of that, that would come out of insurance, is now just gonna come strictly out of operating fund, and that's gonna be revolving, and it will
But
fund
is the
itself.
revenue then gonna also, are you just gonna get rid
No,
of
the
the
revenue,
enterprise fund?
the revenue is in the enterprise fund.
Right.
It doesn't
So
come,
you're just reappropriating it back to the general fund now, since you're spending in the general fund.
it's not getting reappropriated, that's,
No, that's what I mean, let's say it runs a $20,000 profit, quote unquote, surplus.
yes.
Right now, you're still buying the computer parts, right, from that 20,000. But you're saying you're buying it through the general fund.
Right, and what we did last year to accommodate that is we bought the teacher laptops
Right,
out of that fund
correct.
to offset that, and we are going to switch that for 27, so that that's no longer happening, there's not that,
Right, I
back
guess
and
mine's
forth.
just an accounting question now, of you're, instead of reappropriating it back to the enterprise fund, you're just gonna move it to the general fund and then spend in the general fund.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so that's
okay,
my
I'm
point
sorry,
is though,
yes.
if you weren't doing that, isn't that some new revenues transfer in, isn't it? Well, I mean,
Yes and no, but when you think about a reappropriation, it's not truly revenue, the
Yeah,
reappropriation
but
is
it's real
offsetting
money.
an expense, so,
I know, but it's real money that you're spending against,
but it's not gonna come in, well,
yeah.
okay, from an
My
accounting
point is you
perspective,
should-
yes, I see what you're saying.
I understand the conceptual thing of you're already doing it, but in terms of the formality of recognizing it as revenue into the general fund.
Are you talking about for fiscal 26 or in fiscal 27? But in fiscal 27, it wouldn't be a reappropriation, that's what we're saying.
Correct, you're just taking it into the general fund and buying the parts in the general fund, like you have that. last year you.
No, you said you were
No,
gonna
I'm saying I
buy
want to
it.
do the opposite.
Yes, yeah.
I want to do the opposite
Yeah.
in fiscal
I
'27.
wanna take the spending out of.
The spending will come out of the enterprise fund. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No.
I'm like, this math is not mathing.
Well, then, when you buy the repair parts, where's it being charged to right now?
Right now, it's coming out of the operating fund. The repair parts, it's coming out of operating fund.
The general
The
fund?
general fund, yes.
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 And you use the surplus in the enterprise fund for the one-off purchases of actual laptops.
Yes.
This year with the surplus, you're gonna use it to fund the repair parts.
There's no more
There's
surplus.
there's not gonna be a surplus, that's, I guess,
I guess my point is going, where's the insurance money being booked when it comes in?
To the enterprise account.
Right, and then the spending's in the general fund.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
We're gonna change it, it's gonna be spended in the enterprise.
You're gonna spend it in the enterprise fund.
Yes, where it's all the money.
And we were
will be.
talking
Yes, that's
past each
right,
other.
yes, it's being spent in
Yeah,
the
never
enterprise
mind.
account.
Yeah, so you're gonna treat it like a true enterprise fund.
Correct,
Thank
yes.
you.
We-
I guess that's what we should have said.
All right, 5 minutes to clear that up.
Okay, making me nervous there, Bob. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So this one's kind of like lumped together, so, we might wanna break this one out. I think I'm gonna break it out into two separate things, but curriculum and supplies. So we have several items for curriculum that, if you recall, we took out of the budget cycle last year, just because it wasn't required. We didn't have to do it. One of them is the new middle school, social studies for new middle school. There are a couple of other programs that were kind of, and I don't wanna speak I don't wanna misspeak when I'm saying things are getting swapped out, but there are different, like some programmatic platform changes that are happening, there are some changes, they have additional costs. These are all things that we have been doing already, but the platforms themselves are changing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that we're just introducing new curriculum, but those two things are gonna increase our curriculum costs, cause we need to, again, just like with technology, we need to add these back into the operating budget. Like, we have to do them, we have to have high quality curriculum, we don't have a choice. So in order to provide that curriculum, we have to just make the decision during these budget cycles, are we gonna be doing it in the short term? Are we gonna look at like 6-year programs and doing it over the long term? So I think most of the discussion around that is gonna come with, what do we think is in the best interest of the students in the district in terms of moving forward with them, not that we are not going to do them, but in what capacity are we gonna do them? So when we're looking at these changes, it's gonna be, do we wanna do, kind of, for lack of a better phrase, rip the Band-Aid off and do a 6-year plan and have it now and take the hit in this budget cycle? Do we wanna spread it out over the next few years? If it's a curriculum that we know that we're gonna stay with and that we wanna use. So, we've got, what I'm going to do is put in for like the most expensive option in terms of this is if we were to buy this curriculum in full right now, and then we can kind of discuss if that's, how we wanna move forward. For instructional materials and classrooms supplies, this is an interesting topic because in talking with, our director of curriculum, the actual cost of the items is not, for instructional materials, is not changing drastically. Those costs still exist, it's not like they're going away in the budget, but there's not a huge increase. I wanna say, like, standard is 3% year over year. In terms of classroom supplies, in talking with all of the principals, there was very little discussion over needing additional funds for
I don't
supplies.
believe this one for a minute. I do not believe it for a
I mean,
minute.
supplies like
Like,
paper.
so not office supplies.
Not
so,
office,
so there
more
are two
like-
different things, and when you look at the budget, it's
Or like books and stuff for the kids, or
so the supplies can come in many forms, but we have the curriculum supplies, so that's done at the administrative level. And so some of that, when we're talking about like instructional materials, that's where that's coming from. So those are books at the different grade levels, and we always put a request out and we say, like, anything that's outdated, anything that needs to be replaced, that's all coming from the like central admin level. Then you have instructional materials at the school level, and those are things that are used in the classroom. So those are things that are used by teachers, used by students. It can be a variety of different things. And then we have general office supplies. So when we're talking about here are things that are actively being used for instruction and in the classroom. And there was not a dramatic change from what was being requested. And, you know, curious to see, again, I want feedback because as Jen is shaking her head, no.
Well, I'm laughing. I
But
hear this
here's
like
all
I'm
the time.
thinking-
Right. Historically, that line has never been 100% fully executed. The supplies. I mean, I look at the UCOA line and it's never been on, so that's why I always
That's
shake my
because
head
you've
going
got teachers
when
doing
people say there's
GoFundMes
not
on
enough
social media
supplies.
for their classroom
I agree.
supplies.
They, or I was even thinking of things like, the elementary schools, like all the fifth graders they'll have, what do you wanna call it, like, the books to write like their schedule and stuff in. The PTOs are paying for it, which really, you shouldn't be
Their
having.
planners?
Yes, not in middle school, but in elementary school, the PTOs
I was
are,
gonna say,
well, at least
I
I
know,
know
I
it
see
for, I
those
know a bunch
middle
of, like,
school planners
the
come in every
PTOs
year.
are playing
Right.
for the planners. And sometimes, now that I'm on the school committee, I'm like, why didn't we just ask? Like, I feel like the school should have been providing that, not,
Right, but
The
the
PTO, like, we
point
should-
is, if the line's not been expended,
Right,
Well, that's
it's
my point,
because,
they're not asking.
right, 'cause I think, so I think it's just crazy
Right.
things like that, or like, the PTOs will be like, oh, here,
so I think the point
Let's
of
get all
remaining
this supplies for
consistent
the
is
teachers.
accurate until you see the demand come in that, or, so I think your
So-
point is right.
And
yeah,
and
or
I
the
Definitely
GoFundMe, you're
consistent,
right.
But I don't believe that the demand is accurate to the supply line, I guess that's
It's almost
the
like they're
better
not
way to-
asking for stuff.
I was gonna say, is it,
Yeah.
do you think that it's more that this is coming from the principals and the feedback that they're getting from their teachers is not?
My
Accurate?
100% true statement is I don't think the teachers are communicating the need to the principals. That's my honest, true belief.
Okay.
Because I
Um,
don't think the principals are saying to the teachers, no, I'm not gonna give you your what.
I
don't think
100%
that's
agree,
happening.
and I also think like Teacher Appreciation Week, like all the parents get, like, give the
Right.
teachers stuff, or the beginning of the year,
And
the
I
PTO
don't
will
think
be
the
like, hey, what do
teachers
you
are
need,
being,
and then
like,
ask
I
all
don't
the
think there's
parents to
any
supply
ill
it.
will on the teachers' part. I'm sure the teachers are like, I don't wanna ask, I don't wanna be a
Yes,
burden,
I
I don't
agree.
wanna this.
I agree.
Well,
I feel like
let's
that's
find
it.
out, because last year,
Mm-hmm.
when we met with each principal to make sure we were actually getting what the needs were. Because we said, we're not gonna go out to families, we're not gonna make requests, we need to know
Yeah.
exactly what are the
But
supplies
that's still
we need.
happening.
It is. Yeah, like even
And
in
even
like
on
the
the- so
Wickford
it's-
newsletter,
But-
it's
one day
very
it had
possible
like,
too.
Newsletters,
But
Facebook posts,
it's also
right.
possible that
And it's
when the
only
principals are
January.
getting that, there's also an expectation, and I don't know if it's just from years and years and years, and it's not, you know, I don't send out an email saying, I don't wanna see an extra $1 in your budget, but when they come to their budget meetings, they're coming with completed budgets, just like we've asked them, and they are balanced budgets, so they are level funding themselves.
Right.
And it could just be stemming from that understanding that every year we don't expect you to be asking for more money.
Right.
And so when they come to me and we're talking about it, and we're having these very candid conversations about what they need, and we've had these conversations, tell me, you know, we try and be open and be like, you know, what don't you have? And I think a part of it might just be that they're just used to saying, don't ask for more money.
Right.
That we're, you know,
maybe, or
there
not
are
even
other
like,
things
I
that are
need
more
tissue,
important
I
in the
need, like,
budget.
Right.
kind of like things that I think teachers and parents just bring in themselves too. Do you know what I mean? That I think they
Yeah.
don't think to ask.
I think the condition has always been.
Yeah, they don't think to ask.
We will get it, we will not get it from you, North Kingstown School District, we will get it from families, right? And I
Yeah.
think like you said too, Leslie, the expectation is we're gonna come in, and I don't think there's any like ill will, I don't think there's anything, but I think like hooray, $3 million worth of staffing, but like I wanna see a request for school supplies too, cause I know that the demand is there also, and that doesn't mean we're gonna buy you $80 billion worth of school supplies, but like, let's see what the true need is so that we can make sure, cause it breaks my heart to see teachers like asking for stuff in January, right? Like if it's
Yeah.
May 15th, like it would make sense you're out of stuff, and maybe we're a little tight on the money, and then maybe Leslie's like, do you really need that ream of paper today? You know, but like, it's January, we shouldn't be there.
Right.
But why wouldn't there just be from principals a standard kit, you know? If every student is getting a planner, why isn't
True,
every
yeah,
school?
I don't know.
Well,
because
and maybe it's
every-
not, but I guess my point is every
maybe
classroom
It is not
needs-
as simple as that, because you go through and every grade level wants something different. One grade level may say, well, I want, you know, colored folders for all my students, and I want, you know, in fourth, and again, it's just an example, in A grade level, we want a different colored folder and binder for each subject area. Well, that might happen in one grade in one school, but another school, those teachers aren't setting
Right,
it up the
okay, I
same.
guess, Kenny, why
So
But the
it's not
planners,
like
though,
why wouldn't there be
is an
something
example
of
that everyone would
a
need.
per pupil expense,
Mhm.
and let the principals and you know, with your staff help, go, okay, so just like the state has a B, right? A foundational educational cost per student, and then there's a different one, right? But why wouldn't you just say, if X school has X students, the
We do.
We do,
Supply-
that is exactly what I
Right.
do, that
So
is
then I
exactly
guess the
how I
point
do
is,
it.
then the money's there, then either that's wrong,
Or they're
because
not
they
using
certainly
it.
have not been spending up to the level.
Well, and that is exactly what happens, so if you were to dig down into my little budget notes for everything, it will say like for art at the elementary level, it's approximately this amount per student, and based on each of the elementary schools, depending on how many students they have, it's that number multiplied by this is their budget line.
Right.
And then, so we do that exercise, and then I say to them, is that enough? Does that seem right? Like, do you have particular programming that you do at your school that you know, this is not the right number because your art teacher does X, Y, and Z every year, like they do a ceramics class. I'm making this up, obviously, but, so that is exactly what happens. We say for instructional materials, it's X amount of dollars for elementary, middle school, and then we look at that number together and we say, do you think this is gonna work? We look at what they've spent historically for the last 3 years. But to your point, what does happen a lot is they encumber all year and they have this money, and then at the end of the year, when I say, okay, I'm shutting off spending and it's May and everything gets unencumbered, we go from a, $800,000 surplus to a $2 million surplus because they've suddenly been like, nope, I don't need anything else for the rest of the year.
So you think they're not spending it like in September? You know what I mean? Like, you know,
But
what,
it should be, right? So when you're making
how
a
do we get
request
them
for
to
the
do
school
that?
year,
Maybe
all of
that's
that
the
should be
difference.
coming through between July and the first few months.
You
of school.
usually will see like a July, a September order, and then a January. You get halfway through the year and you need to replenish, and you have that. That's really what you should see. So by that January, February timeframe, most of those budgets should be spent because they should be getting everything that they need to get them through the end of the year. And what we're finding is that we're getting to the end of the year and they're still.
so maybe it's just us reminding them to use it?
Well, again, you're presupposing that, and I'm not saying it is or isn't, but the data shows one thing. The hypothesis that they're not asking may be true, but it may not be true. I guess the point would be is to let the administration figure out, like, with the principals to discuss, they're given numbers. So let them figure out whether it's accurate or not, as opposed to, I don't think it's at the level of school committee to be trying to change the behaviors of teachers and principals.
I think some of it might come from, also there's a piece where we're still working it out here because I do things differently than had been done by my predecessor, but I really like to break things out between the instructional materials, classroom supplies, office supplies. But when you think of like that office supply number, that's where the copy paper comes in, but the copy paper is being used for instructional material. They're making all of their copies and everything for their classes, so I think they might, in their minds, they're thinking instructional materials, all this stuff, we're fine, we have the right amount, but they're running out of money in this other area, which is the office supplies.
Office.
Oh, and they think they can't trade between the
Well, and
buckets?
you can, you can do budget transfers and you can do things, but I'm trying to be really good about making sure that they're putting and using the money in the right buckets
Yep.
so that we can properly track it and say, do you have enough? But this piece over here that falls in the office supplies plays a huge part in the instructional material piece. So I don't know if maybe we do think about increasing it, but taking some of that kind of, that money from the copy paper thing, like shifting the money around and putting it in the places where maybe they don't realize they can use it because it's sitting in some.
Well, even if you think about like ordering folders and pencils, like, is that coming out of office supplies or is that coming out of instructional supplies?
That
Like,
should come
where
out of
is that
instructional.
So I'll tell you, I think the
Right, so
PTO
where's-
in elementary is also paying for the folders.
Right, so maybe the
But
PTO
where?
should
What
stop doing
What
that.
schools are doing that though? I mean, I think we need to know for sure, right? Like you're
Yeah.
I can
saying.
prove for one
But
school,
where's
because I
the-
actually.
I would wanna see factually, where's the budget that's happening? Because why, if we're going to the schools and we're telling to the principals, we know what you need, right? Then why are PTOs funding
Yes.
instructional materials.
Cause I think they've always been funding, like for instance, if they've always been funding the
So we can-
folders and
so-
the planners, I think
so
it just
that's-
happened and no one
So then
questioned it.
that's a request I'm gonna make to the principals, how many of you have PTOs that are funding instructional materials that are going into the classroom?
Hmm.
And we'll find out what that is. I hear you're saying that, but I also want the facts,
Right.
that it's actually happening, to know, well, why? Because last year, I sat with every elementary principal, what do you need for each classroom?
Mhm.
Crayons, markers, glue, dry erase markers, whiteboards, what is it, so we're not putting those requests out to the teachers, to the families. It still happens, I'm not sure how we stop that from happening, no matter what we do, it's kind of like within the culture, we put requests, 'cause I want Kleenex, it might be because I want better Kleenex than what the school department's providing. An example, I'm not saying that,
Well,
but
we
just
had that
saying like that.
conversation too.
Or I also think the
So,
parents are just doing it too,
it's-
like they're saying, hey, what do you
And
need?
That's
You know
different.
what I mean?
That's
So I
different.
think that's also
And
happening.
that happens, they
Yeah,
will reach out
so-
saying, what do you need, it's midway through, we wanna help
Yeah.
out, what do you need in your classroom?
Which I don't think is
And a
gonna
lot of
stop.
times happens, it's hand sanitizer, it's Kleenex, it's more pencils, it's dry erase markers. I think no matter how many dry erase markers we buy, and how many glue sticks we buy, and I'm speaking of being a teacher, you're always gonna need them, because the glue sticks disappear. The dry erase markers, you leave the cap off and they dry out, right? Those are things that we're always going to need. We can
Or the
budget,
kids take
and we can say, you have 24 students, we're gonna buy 3 for each student for the year. That's not gonna be enough. Like, that's just reality,
Right.
it's gonna happen.
I would agree.
But again, we will find out, because we wanna make sure that we are buying the appropriate instructional materials that are
Right,
needed for
and that's my,
the teachers and the
and
students.
I just wanna make sure that, because I believe wholeheartedly that the principals are telling you the truth, right? But
Mhm.
like, is the disconnect, like, are the teachers bringing forward what they actually need, right? So as long as they are, then that's fine, but I just feel like it's not happening there.
I think it's definitely worth doing another ask, and I don't know if we'll be able to get enough information between now and Tuesday to be able to really see if there's a difference, but
Well, I guess my general point is, I think the point of level funding for 27 right now makes sense. And leave it to the administration to come back to school committee
Yeah, I mean,
before the
from a
final process.
documentation standpoint, 100%, it makes
Mhm.
sense. I'm just saying that, like, on paper, that's happening, but in reality, I don't think that it is, so. And I just wanna make sure that, we're accounting for what the true need is.
okay. And I will say it was refreshing this year to have these conversations with the directors and the principals, because kind of now second round through with me, I think they know that when I'm asking them these questions, that it's because I want an
That
honest
you mean it,
answer, and I
right.
mean it, and I
Yep.
wanna know it, and I say to them all the time, I'm not making any promises of what we can have, but if we don't ask for it,
You're not gonna get it.
we're not gonna get it.
Yeah.
And I also, and I say to them, like, I wanna put it out there now, so that should this be something that we need in 6 months into fiscal 27, and we have to go to the school committee, and we have to ask for things, I don't want it to be the first time you've heard of it.
Mhm.
Like, I want it to be out there. And tiny example is, almost every single department asked if they could have some type of catering budget, because what we were finding is that they wanted to do like teacher appreciation, they wanted to do something for their staff, they wanted to, it was a particularly busy season, they wanted to buy them lunch, and they were all paying for it out of their own pocket, because they can't use student activities, they don't really have like a principal's fund or anything like that. And I was noticing it more as I was doing reimbursements for people. I was like, wait, what's this for, what's that for? And they were saying, well, I really, really wanted to do this, is it okay if we get reimbursed? And I thought, well, this is crazy. I don't understand why they don't even have, even if it's small, like some type of catering budget so that they can do that.
Yep.
And when we brought it up at admin council, everyone was like, we
Wouldn't
can
it-
have that? We could do that?
Kenny, wouldn't it just make more sense to have a principal's fund, and then you make sure that it's not being abused?
Mean to be used for reasons
School
like
level
that?
activities that, instead
Oh.
of one-offs of, like, this school wants to do more of this, and your thing is,
Well,
just come
there's-
up with the same thing, if there's 300 students, there's X for supplies, there's X for whatever, extra co-curricular. I'm just saying, at this, to me, again, school committee members can talk for themselves, but at the school committee level, it's more trust the superintendent with some of these buckets. So if you're already reimbursing for things like catering and other stuff on different one-off basis, why wouldn't you just have an allocation per school to let the principals figure out, like, okay, I wanna do a little more of this, I wanna do a little more of this. And the superintendent can decide whether those are appropriate and not being abused, and the school committee decide whether, okay, that's maybe a luxury that might get cut if you need to, but opposed to trying to figure out like, okay, you're doing catering, you're doing this, like,
Well, it depends, so
I
we
think
do
we
have,
want a little more consistency of how the money's being spent at each school,
like, if you're,
right?
if they
Versus
wanna.
just saying, you have 500 students, we're giving you $100 for each student, and
well, I get on
Do what you need.
some of the others, I don't know, well, again,
But we're
it seems
What
to
I'm
be a little
hearing is
crazy
that the
to,
superintendent is
to get-
deciding how he wants to spend the money, and when he makes a recommendation, he'll bring it to us, am I correct?
Well, and the recommendation is we wanna give them $250 in catering, because what we're finding is it's not on the student level, it's not based on the
right,
student.
no, I
It's, this
know.
is purely things that they want to be able to do for the staff to keep morale and keep people
So based
motivated.
on employee building headcounts, right? I mean, it's just, again, some,
But,
Yeah,
but
which
there
is what
are,
we're doing.
there
Yeah, I
are,
think
Right,
we
we're
do.
looking at each
Yeah.
school.
there are
but
student
there's-
activity funds that principals can use to fund to fund things
Correct.
for students and
Mhm.
students
Correct.
only at the schools, and that is entirely at their
Yes.
discretion. It's like a student activity.
And
like
part of it came
principal's
up from that,
fund.
because we had to have that conversation of how student activity funds can be used and not used and what it's
Mhm.
for, and that's why we went the route of, all right, well, if you're saying you wanna be able to have a budget to support school culture, morale of staff and do stuff for them, then we need to give you a separate budget line for that.
yeah, I guess that's my point.
No, but I think that's what
But
they're
that's
doing.
what
If
they're
they're
doing.
one-off
They are doing it.
reimbursements.
But for instructional
Just-
materials,
But
we're
a lot
not.
of them
We're
were
doing that.
reimbursing. What kind of led the conversation was, one, the use of student activity funds, but seeing that they're saying this when we're talking about student activity funds, and I'm realizing nobody's reimbursing for this. They're paying for it themselves out of their own money, and this is, they're doing it because that's what they wanna do for their staff. And for me, I look at it just like I would look at it as providing something for a student. If these are our employees and it's something that they are doing that is important for their employees, we should be providing that to them, as opposed to them paying for it themselves and not reimbursing for it.
No, I
So I
totally
think
get
you're
it.
saying what, they're already doing what you're saying.
Yeah,
For this
except-
budget,
except-
for 27.
For the purposes
But in
of
the
this,
past, they weren't
almost
doing
everyone
it.
said that they wanted some type of catering line, as opposed to just a, like, principal's discretion fund, and for UCOA purposes, there really is not just a principal's
Oh, right, I
discretionary
understand that,
fund.
yeah.
So this was a
Catering
logical
line, you
thing
could
that
get
made
them
sense, that
coffee
seemed
or
to
donuts
fit
or-
a need, and, I started with $250, I think they probably would have all liked to have a little bit more, but I was very conservative with it and said, let's start here and see how it works and see how it goes. But, they were all comfortable at least asking for that, so it's like baby
That's
steps
good,
of
that's good.
things. All right. Where were we? Oh, well,
Migration curriculum.
yes, migration of curriculum. So, I know we've talked about this a couple, at our last meeting, is we have things in Title II and Title III that I do think we need to consider moving to the operating budget. For the purposes of Tuesday's meeting, I was not intending on including them because they would significantly add to the curriculum line. We have, Dr. Duva, correct me if I'm wrong, we have GEMSnet.
Well, can you speak to that, because is the point, you think it's going away, because the school committee did this in July. They approved 250,247 of this stuff to go from fund balance. So I think one thing the school committee knows is, did those funds come in and was fund balance reimbursed? Because in July 25th, here's the memo, GEMSnet, Vision of a Learner, Teacher Mentor Coordinator, all that stuff. The school committee said you can dip into fund balance because we're not sure these federal grants are coming in. I guess what the school committee is owed is, did the federal grants come in?
Of course, yes.
And the fund balance got reimbursed?
So the fund balance.
Or never got touched?
It never got
because-
touched,
okay.
so we paid them out of the account with the understanding, my recommendation, at least to the committee on that night, was we're going to pay these bills, we're gonna pay them out of the operating fund, and should the funds not come in, we would then have approval to use
Fund balance.
fund balance if we needed to cover them, but should should the funds come in, we would then reimburse the operating
Operating
fund from the grants,
So that
which was
happened.
done, yes.
So I guess the question is this hedging again, or you've been told that the Title II for GEMSnet is not coming in? 27.
So I put it here because I want it to be a conversation with the school committee, because I don't think it's just a decision for me to make to say I am now taking this out of this grant because it's a grant that I don't manage. It's, there's a lot of moving parts with this, but I do have concerns about the dollars coming in, and so I think it needs to be a conversation that we need to collectively discuss and say, have the school committee say, Dr. Duval, what is your recommendation? Ask the director of curriculum, what's their recommendation? The assistant superintendent, do they feel confident in the dollars being there and keeping these there? Are these programs that really should be in the operating budget because we've done them now year after year after year, so they're no longer supplemental, they are now, a critical need, and if they're a critical need, they really shouldn't be in Title II and III because those are supplemental programs.
Well, but they're based on federal grant supplemental, and I guess my point would be is, I understand your point, and I guess the recommendation is, yes, sure, the school committee wants to consider it, but then you should open up to going, yeah, well, you've done GEMSNet for 12 years, and science scores haven't improved. So, right, I think there's a conversation, if you're gonna move it to the operating budget, to go, is it actually that useful curriculum?
Well, we had this conversation when the thing came up to be approved this year, and the administration said that it was useful, but I think the question is a larger question about anything being funded out of grants is, are they going to, are these things that we want to continue if we would have to fund them out of the operating budget? And so I think it's not just a GEMSNet question, I think it's a bigger grant conversation in general that we need to have about everything that we're funding out of the grants.
Absolutely, that's
Right.
exactly my point was, I don't wanna just take them out and say, okay, I'm gonna plot these things in the operating budget, so when we have this discussion on Tuesday, you're gonna see all this new curriculum, because it's a much bigger issue. It's like,
Yeah, I think it's a huge thing to ask the taxpayers to pick up stuff on the maybe that the federal grant isn't coming in. Because if the federal grant comes in, well, then what are you spending that on?
I'm not hearing Leslie saying that she's putting it in there, I'm hearing she's saying that we need to discuss things that
And
are.
decide what
I'm
we're gonna
actually
do.
saying that
Yes.
I'm not putting it in
Yes.
there,
Right.
part of my discussion is that you're not gonna see the addition of
Yes.
that, but it is gonna be a talking point.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand that if we decide that, for example, Vision of the Learner or GEMSNet or any of those things, if we're going to continue with them year after year after year, then they should be in our operating budget, as long as they're fitting with the strategic plan and are programmatically doing what we need them to do. But I can't make that decision.
Well, I guess one thing is, yeah, but because historically Title II has always funded this, so it's been important for Title II. I guess what I'm distinguishing is going, there are some structural things that it's okay for grants to fund if it's pretty consistent thing. I understand the point going, if the title dries up, then you need to make the decision of, is it important enough to migrate to the general fund? I would just question the wisdom of bringing this up right now for the school committee when they're gonna be talking about 30 positions and tons of other stuff. That this isn't, to me, an issue that rises yet to the level of clouding the conversation with the school committee. Because you only have 4 hours or however you spend.
I
We
think
have
it's
lots of
important to
hours.
know what
I thought it was important to say,
I
because of all of these other things, when we're talking about trade-offs, when it comes to the migration of curriculum in Title I and Title II, I chose not to put them in the operating budget and to leave them where they are, because I think
Right.
there are other things that are more important, but again, I'm not, if the school committee comes back and says, no, we wanna see what the budget looks like with those in there, we don't wanna do that,
I
that's,
guess my recommendation, superintendent's going, I wouldn't even bring it up to the school committee yet.
I disagree with that.
I disagree
Yeah.
too. I think we have to talk about it.
Dr. Tuva?
I guess my question is, why wouldn't
Right.
we be discussing that right now?
Well, Kenny, it's your budget, so I mean,
I
I
mean,
guess
it's-
my point is, you're gonna be, I don't even know how you're gonna get through talking about 30 positions and all the other stuff, is why would you ever move GEMSNet if it's been historically Title II funded forever, as far as I know it's not forever, but 20 years, into the operating budget.
That's not,
Because-
but that's not the conversation. My understanding is the conversation is, here is our budget, here is what it includes. FYI, out here are these other things that we currently use that are being funded by grant petitions.
Right.
Just a heads up, if the grants go away, at some point, we're gonna have to have a conversation.
Right.
We're not having that conversation right now, we're just letting you know that this conversation is on the horizon.
That's why I think, again, that the superintendent could tell you, so if the point is, you might have this conversation in the future, that's not really a conversation for right now with your budget,
Well,
because
I
you went
think,
through this
Bob, I
all
think-
last year in July.
I think we should give them a heads up, because we also might need to do that, because, okay, historically, right, GEMSNet has been paid for through the Title I grants, but what we're seeing is, little by little, those what we're receiving for grants is decreasing. So why should we rely on grant funds that we may not get for either curriculum, right, for curriculum materials that we know are needed and are required and are something we gotta do every year, or we gotta sign contracts for every 3 years. We might need to move that into the operating budget because it's a need. We're not gonna have a year where, like, we don't need the GEMSNet, we don't need the science material or the curriculum, so we're not gonna worry about it, but it's something we need. And if that's something that I know as the superintendent that we need year after year after year, and we might not be able to fund that from the grant money anymore, then we might need to move that into operating. And is there something that we are doing for one time or just for this 1 year, let's put that in the grant, because it's not something we need to rely on year after year. Like, that's part of this conversation that we may have to do, of moving stuff from grant to operating.
Well, I
I think that's what
perfectly
Les
understand
is
that. I guess
pointing
my
out.
point is saying is, other than saying a maybe, like, it's not a reality for you right now.
I think we've talked about it more in this meeting than I anticipate talking about it. at
I
the
did
school
too, so can we
committee.
move on to the next
Yeah.
thing, cause I feel like we're all on,
Okay.
It's-
go ahead, yeah. let's-
No, it's noted, and I will take that into account with maybe how it's presented on Tuesday, so that it doesn't take up too much time. Tuitions out of district placement, I'm not really gonna talk too much about the CTE part of this, cause I think we've talked about that already. I do wanna just talk about, student services, and I wanna talk about the high school. Just very quickly, these are gonna be places you're gonna see big jumps during the budget meeting, and I wanna, I think it's important to note, and again, if anyone has any like feedback on how to present this, please let me know. So, last year, when we did our out-of-district placements for student services, it's always based on what students we have, the known entity, like we can't, we have no idea what students are gonna come into the district, so. We based it off of what we had, and in the course of the time, as we entered fiscal '26, the student population has changed, we have more outplacements, and our DCYF dollar amount that is due per student has gone up by $22,000 from where we started at the budget time in '26 to this point in time in fiscal '26. So we're seeing a big gap right now, about $230,000 in what we budgeted for that to where we are sitting right now for fiscal '26. So with that in mind, we have to look at what we're budgeting next year, we have to base it on these students, and we have to base it on what DCYF costs. And if we do that, we're gonna be looking at about a $400,000 jump from last year to this year in the budget.
Which is about 50% more than where we're at right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, because we're anticipating, we have to make room for the fact that we will more than likely get at least one additional DCYF student throughout the year. We can't just assume we're not gonna have any more than we have. And then, obviously, we have students that come back into the district, but looking at the costs rising and students going out, we have to budget accordingly. So there's gonna be a big jump. We're gonna see a big jump in this budget. Same with the costs for the tuitions that we pay, or like if we're looking at tutors that we have for students that might be in placements, or nursing services that we have, all of those numbers are going up. So our student service number is gonna be significant in this coming year. But important to also note that like the average outplacement is 5% for the state, and we're only at 3%. So we have these big numbers, and we're still 2% lower than most of the state when it comes to it. But it's gonna be substantial. And similarly with Running Start, I know we talked about this last year. We if a student enrolls and they're qualified and they, we have to enroll them in the program. So last year we had the benefit of ESSER covering like half of the tuition because we had 34 students enroll and it was $200,000. This year, I think we missed the mark by about 2 students, so we're over budget right now, if those students continue through the year. But there's been some new information that came out from RIDE, and they are allowing us to put a cap on it if it exceeds what our budget is. So what the principal at the high school and I have decided to do is we took the average of what we've had for each of the years, and that's what we're basing the budget on. But it added, I think, about $20,000 to the high school budget, which is pretty significant when you're looking at the high school budget. So I just wanted, just to put it out there that one of the main things is this Running Start program.
So, are you saying that we're gonna cap the number of students that we would allow to participate?
So if I understand the new policies that came out from RIDE, is that if you have budgeted, let's just say, $110,000 for students, and you can not limit, but like everybody who applies up until that point, but if you hit your max, like you say, okay, we have $110,000 worth of students going, you can either put people on a wait list, or you can tell them that unfortunately we're at capacity for that year. which they-
But don't have to, so
but
we
you
could
don't- but
make
you
a
don't have to,
decision.
we could
Okay.
then make the decision to say,
Okay.
we have 5 extra students, is the school committee comfortable with us allowing those 5
Okay.
students to
Okay,
participate?
okay.
But we can, if we think it's gonna be a financial burden, which
Okay.
we've never had, they've never done that before, but obviously, I think if we have students that can go, we're gonna want them
Okay.
to participate in the
Okay.
program, but, all right.
I think it'd be useful, Leslie,
Yeah.
for the school committee to see the numbers. And that may be in your presentation, but to see 25, 34, because historically it was smaller.
Yeah, so we had like 12, in some,
if
and
you
then
wanna
one year
take
was
a
34.
issue for our legislators to take on, that should be one they should reconsider, the cost-sharing burden between CCRI and the schools, that it shifted 100% the other way, and that maybe there's a happy medium
The benefit is that
between the two.
they did get CCRI to agree to not raise the tuition though, so that at least the tuition will remain the same for this year, so there was not an increase there.
Yeah, because you probably, what you're just saying, to show each year like how we have an increase.
And
more
a
students are
lot
doing
of what you're seeing here, and this might even be way more detail than we're gonna have next Tuesday, because we're gonna have so much more to cover and to go through. But I'm going to make this presentation, obviously it's available to the public, but I'll make this presentation with the other information that's gonna go out to the school committee, so you'll have this
Okay.
available.
Okay.
Okay, so this slide, I'm gonna have Ken talk about the capital improvement stuff, because I'm not sure how much of this is actually gonna be in the budget. This is just like information that we need, but this is not necessarily anything that's built into the budget that we'll be putting forward, so.
But aren't you gonna do a independent capital request to the town council? Like, that seems like the 767 is exactly the
So,
kind of number
we did that.
you
That
should
was
be
capital-
requesting.
this is our capital
submitted-
asset
Yeah, so we did that
presentation.
with asset management, and
Asset
then we'll do the
management.
same and submit it to the town.
Yeah. See what they say. That makes sense.
So this is here just kind of as, we've put it in the slide so you can see what that request was, so everyone has access to it. But that 767 is not in the budget. It's not part of the operating fund.
Right, which is important to clarify, but it's something the school committee should vote on to forward to the town council, just like the enterprise funds and stuff.
So
They should-
would you want to have that,
That's
have Ken
historically-
give that as
Well,
a
in the-
separate
in the-
presentation
in
with the
past,
enterprise
I
funds?
don't know if we did that last year, in my first year, I submitted a letter to them, but then I think last year, because of the bond and all, I don't
Yeah.
think we did.
No, we
because
should
the
do it
bond
this year.
It should
was
come with the
approved
full
last
weight
year,
of the school
so-
committee's recommendation,
Mhm.
and then,
Do you
or
want
not,
that as part
depending
of
on
the
what the school
budget
committee wants.
presentation?
I
It
think it
doesn't have to be
comes-
part of the budget
No, but it comes,
presentation,
it
but-
came in like after,
Okay.
once we did capital, and then there was a
Yeah.
letter that was submitted to the town along with it.
Okay.
But what, this 767, this is separate from all of the work
Right.
we've already identified. These are things that, we see just as buildings are. We need to keep these buildings up to date every year and other things that we might identify, and that's what's on the next few slides, what we've identified as work that needs to be done.
I would always recommend you have your historic, one bus, one playground. It should just be requesting of the town council every year. One bus, one playground, one upgrade to a media center, one upgrade to a security vestibule. Like, there should just be, based on the depreciation schedule, a consistent thing to the town. And then if you've got one-offs, and then let the town council say yay or nay. Because you know those are all annual capital needs.
Well, I think there's definitely some things that we could put on there of what we need, we know, like, replacement of boilers, right? That's always gonna happen, right? What are other items, system repairs that we have to be aware of that's gonna come up and have a cycle of that request? I don't know if you wanna go to the next.
Well, I just wanna quickly touch on the other two, and that's why I said I'll do the top two and then you can do the bottom one. So, two important things, we do have a request for buses and for vans. I think is it 1 minibus or 2 minibuses? So this is gonna be something that's gonna go, I will put forth, as a recommendation, because I know we've talked, especially at the last budget cycle, we talked about trying to build these things in the fleet upgrades, whether it be for facilities or for transportation, as opposed to just relying on fund balance. But it is a discussion to see if the school committee would prefer to make, surplus assignments in fund balance for our fleets, as opposed to putting it in the operating fund. But I did get a request for a bus and a van, so I will be putting it forward to the school committee, because it's replacing one that really needs to be replaced. And I think one is going to help offset the whole extra bus situation that we had this year, where we thought we were getting rid of a bus, but then we didn't get rid of the bus, with the statewide out-of-district transportation.
Yes,
So that, I think that the van is trying to solve that problem.
I remember that, okay.
So I will put that forward. That being said, we do not have any information from statewide yet about what our costs are gonna be for next year or how the pass-through is gonna work. So we're kind of going a little bit blind in terms of how that's gonna be handled. And then we have our standard bus contract. We do have a 3% increase with the new contract that we signed, so that'll be, we'll see that in our bus rates. And then one thing I wanted to put on here, because it really wasn't anything we talked about at length last year during the budget cycle. We were just like, some people need things. I feel like every single school said that they needed some type of furniture this year in the budget meetings. And again, they were not afraid to ask. I was so proud. But we had Quid, Stony Lane, Forest Park, DMS, and Wickford Middle School. Now I understand Wickford Middle School is a little,
Yeah, sorry.
we're not gonna do that.
Well, I was
their
just wondering though, could they get
their
ones that we
request
could
was-
put in the new building, or is that, or ones that
It
DMS
could,
could have
but I
when the
think-
new building
I think
happened?
also, like I mentioned today,
Like, you know what I mean?
director's meeting, if things are broken, we cannot have kids for the next 2
No,
years.
no, that's why
Yeah.
I'm saying,
So you
like,
gotta look at like what that is.
but
I
I'm
know
kinda
that's
like,
what
could we buy stuff that like
I did say
could go in the new
David,
school, or could just go to
but-
DMS?
Well,
Do you know what I
right,
mean? Like,
it could
buy
be
the
both. Like,
similar.
part of our budget for the new school includes the furnishings and fixings,
Right.
right? So all new desks, tables, chairs, like,
Right.
like whatever they need. But if there are items that's needed, that safety wise, that we do need to.
And there are some definite needs, and a lot of these were requests that came in last year, and we were like, we got so much other stuff, like, in our discussions, we didn't even put it forth in the superintendent recommended budget, but I do think this year, so, whereas last year, I think our furniture and fixtures budget was like $10,000, it's gonna be significantly more this year, and this is why. So when we're looking at it, I am gonna put these forward, because I do think that they're important. I mean, these are the desks and the chairs that our students are in all day, every day. They weren't asking for anything over the top, they were asking for desks and chairs.
I think the desks at Quid are the same ones my husband sat in when he was there,
So weird.
so.
We're working on that. I am actively working on the stuff for
Or
Quid.
even like, I feel like the middle school's desks look like almost elementary school, but like, you know, like the
They
kids
are.
are
There's
dedicated,
some
like
definite
bigger and they're not.
Need, so I am gonna make the recommendation, I made the recommendation to Dr. Duva, he agreed that we're gonna put forth, probably a substantial amount to try and get. It might not be all of the needs that we have, I know.
But even if it's like every year we get a new shipment of desks and chairs, do
Yes.
it by classroom.
Yeah, and we can kind of cycle them out and move things around, but A lot of the schools are using like Feinstein funds right now to do
Mhm.
that, and I really think that it's important that we put it forward. And again, it's one of those things where we'll put it forward, and if things have to be removed, we understand, but
But at least the visibility
there was enough of a
is
request, I
there
thought it was
and we
important.
can plan for it.
Yep, absolutely. All right, you're up.
Okay, so this is the list of items, working with our two interim facility directors. They both work part-time and helping each other out. Yeah.
So you went over this with the Asset Management Commission, you went over this with us at the school committee.
Yeah.
Can I suggest we skip this just in the interest of time?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, we can't, that's right, I forgot we went over
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I would just say, Kenny,
It
real
wasn't.
quick, I mean, $3,000,
I forgot I did that.
I mean,
It's actually 700 when you add it all up.
you can't do it out of your just general maintenance budget.
With what we have here,
No,
No, I
No,
mean, we can,
and
and some
I-
of it
some-
is
some
of it
discussed in
can't-
I
the-
get
some
the
of it-
75K, that should be something, again,
Yeah, I mean-
I would have a consistent schedule, to always ask the town council and ground it in the depreciation, like, I would ask town council every year for 10% of,
Yeah, because this is the
Desk and
list of
chair
stuff
replacement.
that you present, so
Yes,
I
yeah,
think
we
this
went
should
through
be
that.
part of the
Yeah.
formal
Mhm.
request, because you already presented to them, you already presented.
Yeah.
to
and some
them.
of it might be stuff that we can do like right now, or, but it's what we've identified and worked, when I was, we're going arming of, what are some of those needs that are happening right now, and some of it's, stuff that we just need to repair.
And some of this, like, wanting to put this in here is
Playgrounds are
just
on
to
there
see
as
that
well.
you might see jumps in certain things in the operating budget next
Mhm.
week when we present it, because some of this stuff is going to be worked into those things. So it's, and we had started that way last year with, I think we had $230,000 worth of capital improvements that was in the budget that we ultimately pulled out and applied to fund balance, but this is kind of like our starting point. Okay. All right, and we can probably kind of, unless there's more conversation that we wanna have, but this is just detailing out the expansion
It's about the preschool.
for the
that we talked
preschool, which we
Which
talked
you kinda
about
talked
early
about
on.
Talked about
Yeah, we already talked about it, and just the long and short of it is the fiscal impact is we're gonna need classroom supplies, so we're gonna need furniture, we're gonna need additional teaching materials and curriculum, classroom supplies, and then this would require an additional teacher and an additional teaching assistant, which is part of the 30 that was in there. So this is just to give you an idea of the very quick, basic fiscal impact that would come from this programmatic change. Does anyone have any questions on this one? Okay. These, for elementary, what you're seeing here are things that, again, you would see when we're talking about staffing, and we're talking about the different positions that are needed. What we did here is, Dr. Duva laid it out in terms of like elementary programming, why the need is there. So,
can I, with the consent of the rest of the committee, if this is all gonna go to the school committee, we're not adding value, because we're not gonna pull any of these recommendations, so,
well, that's what I'm saying, unless there are things, like if you're, like,
yeah, I would just recommend.
if there are things you don't recommend me bringing, tell me.
No, I think.
Right,
we
I
should
think the
all-
general
yeah.
consensus is you're gonna bring them all forward and
Mhm.
let the school
Yep.
committee, and so I would just say, can we, unless there's disagreement, just skip to do all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, what we wanted to do was to lay out, instead of just saying we have all these positions, was
Right.
to give you an idea of how some of those positions were gonna play into the programmatic needs, but that's,
But yeah,
Essentially
I
what
don't
we have
think
here.
the committee's gonna not recommend any go forward, so.
Yeah, no,
okay.
Yep.
Okay, then that's kind of what we have, so I don't know if there's, anything that you were hoping would be included that you're not seeing here?
Yes, the electric.
The electric, okay.
So
Well,
in the
that-
stage 2, it talked about, so the questions were, does the district get to choose the supplier, or is that from the town?
No, we do.
dictate?
We get to
So
choose.
the stage 2 submission said, the district was being put into the standard, but there was other choices, and one which I think was cheaper, but I don't know, cause the stage 2 didn't have the pricing. But NKSD policy for energy says there's supposed to be an annual report every year that talks to the supplier and the cost and all that, so I would make a recommendation that you bring forward to the school committee what our current supplier is, what the rate is, when it expires, and what the school committee's or options are when renewal hits. Because I could be wrong, but I think you're in a higher cost one than you need to be, but that's again the purview of the administration and school committee.
if they rolled it into the standard, there is one lower.
yes.
Yeah,
So I think
And-
that's something the school committee and superintendent need to discuss.
yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay. And I do have our rates and I do have all of our information for who our supplier is right now. So we do
Yeah,
have a
I'm
supplier
impressed.
and I
just
do have,
think
and I do
would
have
add
the
it
rate.
as another
I
element for the
agree.
school committee.
Could you do the whole motion again so I can write it down?
All right. Recommend that the administration bring forward to the school committee information about the district's electrical supplier, current costs, and possible options for FY '27.
Cost. And,
And so just to touch upon that, so we do have a supplier, we have some that are currently, I'm actually working with the interim facility director because we have some that are on one contract and others that have been up, and we're trying to align everything to one
Right.
supplier. And what's happening is like one's coming up and if the school is saying, oh, we wanna be on this supplier,
I guess the point would be is bring that to the school committee.
oh, and I can,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, that's
Right.
easy enough to do, because we're also in the midst of trying to, the ones that are no longer under contract, determining, you know, what contract we wanna do we wanna roll them into this? I can say that the rate that we have on our contract was better than the rate that the town has, because they did give us the option to go with them. And when we did the investigating and we looked at everything, our rate that we currently had with our contract was, we were at an advantage to them, so they recommended we stay put, but at any time, if the rate that they have is better, we can
Switch
opt into
over.
that, and we have all of the information for, the broker that does that,
Okay.
so, but I can easily bring that. I can do the same, I mean, we have the same, I don't know if it matters, but we have the same for gas too, cause you can pick your supplier for gas, I mean, yeah.
So we have a second.
do you wanna include, you already did, Jen seconded. I just need you to redo the motion so I can write it down. Cause sometimes the recording doesn't go on for a few days and I was gonna try to do that. Do you want me to add gas
Then I'll withdraw my motion
and then make a new one with the
and
gas?
make a new one that adds
I got it.
gas.
Alright. Bob's first. Jenna, you're in a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Alright, all those in favor of the recommendation?
Aye.
Aye. Alright,
Anybody have anything else? Do we feel like this is the full breadth of what
Yeah, I
we
think.
wanna put forward?
Along with the list of the positions with the narrative, you know, as soon as you can, send them over, I think that's good.
yeah, I think it's good information too on like
Maybe
pointing out
tomorrow we
stuff to
can
look
just-
at.
Leslie, maybe tomorrow we can just look over all of the narratives. I know you said you wanted to kind of have a systematic
Well,
form, but
and
it
me,
might be
I'll,
good just to.
Maybe you don't
send
need
it.
to have to be.
I
No,
just
I-
think
I-
it's-
you
I-
just-
I'm
no,
just
I mean,
saying,
let
like,
me
it's-
get your opinion on this, so what I was trying to do is say like, okay, this is the position that they're asking for, this is who it would impact, this is the program, this is the narrative, and then have the fiscal impact of that. Which is proving to be very challenging because of how they're doing it and not everything is a full position, so it's, for nothing else, it's just time consuming. But I don't know if it's helpful for you to have that fiscal impact with the narrative, or if it's fine to just have, here's the list, here's the fiscal impact for these positions, and the narrative is over here.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
no,
make it so
that's
that you
fine.
have
Yeah.
everything and or all of them look the same,
Yeah,
but if
no,
that
no, no,
doesn't
that's-
matter.
that's-
No, cause I
no,
think
no,
that's
yeah.
sort of fine, and then the narrative is what was sent to you,
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
don't, I would not do
And
the extra
everybody
work.
chose to do their narrative in a little bit of a different
Yeah, no,
way.
no, no,
I think that's
yeah,
totally
don't
fine.
go through and see, yeah.
I still have to do my own narrative.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
no, I think you don't need to do the extra work, I think I
No,
just sending
agreed.
that would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially because then we'll get it ahead of time, we'll have time to read
Yeah.
through it anyways.
And I cannot remember, Sherry, were you part of the budget cycle last year?
Yes.
I can never remember who was not, who was on it. But similar to last year, so I have my worksheet that I send with the budget that has each department and like the main, essentially these bullet points written
Yep.
out. So
Yeah.
as you're going through the budget, you're having all of this commentary with it. So instead of putting the positions within that, I'm just gonna send it separately since
Yes.
it's so,
Yeah, I think that's
Big.
perfect.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, Yeah.
so you might get some things piecemeal, but.
yeah,
Sorry.
awesome, thank you.
Alright.
And then my only other, just comment would be, as we go through the budget discussion, I think just seeing the grant positions and the regular positions together in terms of like total staffing, kind of like in that thing that I showed you, right, here's the position, it's grant, it's operating, like, and like the total FTEs will be helpful to see like where it's coming from, so that we know, kind of along the same lines of the, curriculum, like, is this a position that, because I think a lot of times the grant stuff is over here and it doesn't exist, and like,
Well, and it really is not, with the way that North Kingston does its budget, it's not factored in at all. It's like, oh, it's in a grant, we just,
that's what I mean,
we
and
just
like, we
take it
don't
out.
even know.
It's like, we're not even talking about it,
Right, I
you know,
think we really
operationally.
wanna have visibility to it all together, especially if we're gonna have to start having those conversations,
Mhm.
you know, about which ones we wanna consider moving in.
And I will do my best to try and get it in a format that makes sense, but if, at a minimum, if I can't, I will have like my salary sheet that I have that was in there before,
Yep.
and then I will have the grant on that
Underneath
same
it,
sheet.
yep.
And I will also have food service
Yes.
on that same sheet,
Yep.
so that we can see like collectively, these are all our positions, so they might not be factored into the totals,
Yep.
but you'll at least have the information so you can see, oh, we have, you know, $1 million worth of positions in Title I or something
Yes.
like
Yep.
that. So
Yeah.
it may not be exact,
Yeah,
or it might be something that kind of develops over the course of the budget workshops and the budget cycles as we go through it and have more time to.
yep, yep, that would be good.
Can't your
Yeah.
HR just generate a list of employees and add a column that says fund source? That should be a very simple thing for HR to do.
I mean, yes, I mean, I could do that, but within the context of the actual, like, budget, it's just gonna be a separate,
Correct.
you want
No.
it just as a separate
Yeah,
document?
that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's-
As opposed
Yeah.
to being like,
Right.
here's the budget, here's all the
No.
dollars.
No, no,
here's
I just want a
everything.
separate,
Yeah.
That's what I
send it
think
just a
they're
separate
saying.
document.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah,
totally
make it
different, oh,
simple.
that I can do.
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
HR, yeah, and you
Yeah.
could ask
Oh, I was
HR.
overcomplicating
Oh,
this,
yeah,
like
yeah,
you
no,
Well,
were.
they
thank you for
should have that.
clarifying that, yeah, just
It
a,
should be in the
yeah.
mayor's
Yes.
voice budget.
Oh my god, that's,
Very
Yeah.
simple.
yeah.
Yeah,
you're
it doesn't
making-
need any dollars attached to it, just like it exists and this is where it comes from.
Oh, that, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that,
Yeah.
And if it's benefit eligible or not.
Yeah, I don't even care about that part at this point,
Well,
just, you know,
that's
where
kind of
it
an important
is.
driver if you're saying health benefits or.
Yeah.
I would agree, like, I think it would be good to even add that, just so that, also
Because-
Leslie, you can be
because
like, look how many
ultimately-
people are getting
Well,
benefits.
ultimately, you need to sum up your FTEs, so that's, and then you need the FTE column.
Yeah, that's, and Leslie, I sent you an
It's very
example of it,
simple.
it was like, here's position A, and then it's like, grant position 0.4 FTE,
Right.
operating budget 0.6 FTE, total 1.0 FTE for that position or whatever, if it
Mhm.
wasn't like, and it kind of broke it out that way, and it was just really, and it broke it out by like, elementary school teacher at this school, elementary school teacher at that school, and it was just really,
if I don't have to tie any funding to it, it makes it
oh, no funding, no,
significantly
Yeah, no funding.
easier
yeah,
to do.
yeah,
Just
Okay.
the source.
just the
one
source, yeah,
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
absolutely.
All right.
And as always, I'm going to do my absolute best to get these documents to the school committee with as much advance notice as possible. But the reality of that is there are only so many hours in my day, and I am only one person. And I want to make sure that everything is clean and nothing is missed, and that we don't have any issues. So, you know,
And that's why
I
I
don't
don't worry
wanna
about
rush
cleaning
it
up
just
that
for the
other
sake of
one.
rushing
Yeah.
it.
That's
But-
what I'm saying, they're like,
but
don't worry about
anything-
cleaning it up.
And, you know, anything that I can get done ahead of time, I will just kind of send out, as opposed to trying to make everything in a nice little pretty bundle. You might get multiple emails from me or different things as they're completed,
Yeah,
but at least you'll have them. And
Yeah.
or
I agree.
actually, do you think it would be easier if I just created a shared folder and put everything in the shared folder and just shared that
Yes.
with the school committee?
Mhm.
Is that better?
Yes.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, cause then you can just put stuff in there.
And as I finish things, I'll just put it in there and
Mhm.
just send a notice letting
And
you know
say,
there's
go
new
to the-
documents in there.
Yep,
Okay, even better. Going to do that.
Perfect.
yeah, cause then technically it's all together in one place.
And I'm gonna make them all view only, view only.
So we can't mess up your stuff.
Because if
I
anything
don't
gets messed
want us
up,
adding
I'll lose my
money.
mind.
Just kidding. Okay, do we have any other discussion on that? Alright, I had put on here, cause I think I should have put discussion about the January 21st meeting, but I actually think we won't have quorum anyways.
Well, I'll make a motion on item 6 for the advisory committee chairs to solicit the members for an alternate meeting before February 3rd. I think that's when your
Next
school
budget
committee
workshop.
has to approve.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
a second.
Yeah, my just general point is, it's the day after your meeting. I don't think you're gonna have time to take all the guidance you get from the school committee, and I don't think the school committee members want to, after potentially a very long meeting, to come in and just rehash the same things they just talked about. So I don't think there's a lot of value added by having a meeting 12 hours after your
Alright.
major meeting. You'll have no time to do anything,
No,
so,
not at all.
Okay,
Sometimes it takes me just that long to go through all the questions.
right.
I know. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Someone want to second?
Second, so I'm deleting this out of my calendar for the 21st, yes?
Yes, and I'll send, yes.
And I just go back, so the school, on our budget calendar, February 11th is the meeting that we have scheduled for budget approval.
Oh, so not
February 11th?
Yeah, February 11th, not February 3rd.
Because we have February 3rd is the budget
Sorry, that's why I
workshop.
was sitting here quiet, I was trying to go
Oh, good
back
then.
and
You
check.
mean
What
February
time?
10th, I don't have the,
So we have a meeting on,
February 10th is a Tuesday.
Why do we have February 11th on here?
maybe that's when you have to
no,
translate it to the
February
school, to
10th.
the town.
On my budget calendar, did I put the 11?
This is the 11th.
That's probably operating in the wrong year. I've noticed
I
I've been
feel
in.
like I remember a
looking-
conversation about that when we were looking at the calendar.
Oh, we did that during the meeting. We talked about
Yeah.
how it was the wrong day.
Yeah,
We
because
did.
Tuesday is the 10th.
yes, we're meeting on the 10th.
Right, so it's
And
the
we're
10th.
meeting
I'm
the
just changing it
2nd.
here.
Right, so I think the second is sufficient. I don't think
Well,
we
we're
need
meeting
another-
on the 2nd, then we have another budget workshop on the 3rd.
Right, there's a
Yes.
budget finance meeting on
And then,
the 2nd.
if all goes well, it's
Workshop
gonna
the
get
3rd,
approved
approved
on
for the
the
10th.
10th, I want it to be the 11th, to go to
Our deadline is the 23rd to submit,
the town, because it has to go
Right.
to the town.
it's be in the town by the 23rd.
I mean, I personally think the second is fine if, again, all the materials are ready, all the key points are teed up.
I would agree, so,
I'm thinking that the meeting on the 2nd is gonna be a review of all the questions that came out of the budget workshop on next Tuesday, with what our responses to those are going to be, and then whether or not we recommend those responses to go to the school committee the next day.
and we
Yeah.
can ahead of time put on the 3rd if we want to, and not wait till the 10th to have any recommendations. You know what I mean, like, I could
Yeah.
a spot. Okay, so can we go back and not solicit a meeting?
No, I think,
You still want
I
to?
think the
Okay.
motion is to reschedule. Your decision may be we don't reschedule.
All right, got it. All right, can we go back to the, all right, all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna have to do the minutes tonight.